Welcome everyone to Through the Void Gate, a Warcaster podcast for new and experienced players. Deploying in 3.
Hello and welcome to Through the Void Gate, episode 1-1. I'm Justin, here with Spencer.
Hey.
And two special guests today. We have Ryan.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Ryan, what might people know you from?
So I run Studio M on YouTube, and a lot of the stuff I've been doing lately is 3D printing stuff and battle reports and videos like that you guys might have seen.
Sweet. And we're also here with Red.
Hey, what's up?
And what might people know you from, Red?
Well, if you actually listen, which I hope you don't because it's horrible. I am from the Hyper News Network. We are a podcast on Warcaster. And that's pretty much it. And then we do a little bit of Twitch on our Twitch stream at Hyper News Network at Twitch.
Sweet. So that brings us into the news. For ourselves, we've kind of, Through the Void Gate is going to more of a bi-weekly format. Currently, news is a little slow in the Warcaster world, and we'd rather bring better content rather than trying to make episodes that don't exist. So stay tuned for us bi-weekly. We will have good content for you. Actually, upcoming, we have a few exciting interviews. So stay tuned to the end, and we'll tell you about that. Spencer, what else do we have in the news?
Yeah, so Privateer Press finally delivered on the Kickstarter 1 reward, which was a painting guide for the original factions. And the awesome thing is that they also gave it out to all of the Kickstarter 2 backers, which I was excited about because I wasn't able to back Kickstarter 1. Some really cool things about that is that there are actually some unreleased paints being teased in there that they've used for these studio schemes. So we've got some cool paint products in the works over at Privateer Press to look forward to.
That's awesome. And, a lot of people always want to know what the exact mix is for the colors for the studio schemes, because some people really love to just replicate studio schemes. And that's a great place to find those mixtures and how to get that effect. So into the community section, Sneaky, you wanted to tell us about something coming up from War Budgies.
Yeah, so War Budgies is a YouTuber who does narrative style battle reports. And so he just teased the other day that he's going to be starting up a new narrative series for Warcaster on February the 13th. If you didn't watch the original Jericho Reach videos, you should. They're really entertaining. He does an awesome job as far as production goes. Like, this guy does a ton of post-production work. So really high quality stuff. And if you're into narrative stuff at all, definitely check it out.
Something else cool about what he does is he has great terrain. Like, I know he had this one huge complex for one of his missions, which I thought was amazing. And he kind of balances the narrative and gameplay aspects really well. Like, he'll have a gameplay aspect and be like, oh, well, this happened. It's not like he's trying to shove a narrative down your throat. He's really good about that. So I'm excited for it personally. Also in the community, Ryan, you've been making some things. What kinds of things have you been making, man?
Yeah, so since Privateer Press decided to put out their lovely objective markers with the new rules and stuff, I kind of decided that probably be a smart idea to put together some objective markers that when we get the Kickstarter to actual 3D objective markers, we'll have some scoring halos that you can magnetize those objects to. That was the first thing I kind of started working on, and then that kind of spiraled into a bunch of bases and base inserts for all the different sizes of bases for Warcaster, coming up with some crazy ideas for some modular bases that may or may not work. We haven't got to that point of testing yet. And then some void gates. So the void gates are on the list next to kind of finish up and get put out for people to be able to 3D print. And after that, possibly resin dice, pending. We'll see how that one goes.
Well, I'm excited for a lot of this. I know the scoring halos are something I've been kind of considering how I could get done and everything. So I just ordered a 3D printer recently. I'm definitely going to be getting them. They look really good. He has like 6 variants of it, and I think it just speeds up the speed of play and efficiency of play. And anything that does that is something I just immediately latch on to. So.
And that's on top of all the YouTube content he's putting out.
Yeah,
he's
not even, So he's got a lot going on.
I mean, yeah.
So.
It is a lot. Yeah, I've got some beginner guides out. If you guys want to head over to Studio M on YouTube, just search for it. There's some beginner guides for Warcaster on there, and then we'll be doing some more collab work to put out some kind of faction guides as far as being able to show some physical representation of builds for different squads for different factions, and then kind of going through some scenarios and what's kind of best for each faction on different scenarios and different builds for like 8.2s and 11.3 and then full battles. So, or 11.2, sorry.
I'm looking forward to all that. It's great. I love people putting out stuff for the community. So I'm super hyped for all of it, and thanks for everything you do, Ryan.
Yeah, for sure, man.
And in other news, the first TTS Pendulum League just ended, and there was a vote. Do we go on with it because we already had a winner and there was another round that needed to be done, or do we just start the next league off and make it a de-escalation league? And the vote ended up coming back. People wanted a de-escalation league sooner than later, and so that tournament is going to start on the 7th of February. The signups end 7th of January or February, so that's 5 days from. So I hope to see everybody in there. I'm excited. I hope everybody else is excited. And that kind of brings us to the topic of our episode today. We're kind of going over what happened in the first TTS Online Pendulum League. Sneaky, would you like to go over the structure and how that worked a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I used Chalong as the bracket system. So it was pretty cool because it basically has a built-in Swiss system and allows people to sign up, and it just makes everything easy on my end. I also have 0 input on the brackets, so when I'm doing things and playing myself, people can't say that I'm like messing with the brackets or favoring other people or anything like that. So I really appreciate the fact that I just press a button and then the tournament's gone. And so it's set up just like Pendulum in the packet. I didn't really make any changes to the actual Pendulum rules except for I extended the clock times a little bit just because we had a bunch of new players in and TTS is a little bit slower. So I wanted to give people a little bit more of a window that they could play on and not have to feel super pressured by the clock, because I wanted, it's more about just having a good experience, and I'd rather people win by winning and not by, clocking. So other than that, it's pretty much standard Pendulum stuff. The event organizer things that I decided was that you could have 50% overhang, you could not stand on objectives that counted as cover, and that was pretty much it. Now, yeah, and then it was a 12-person tournament, which fell into the 4-round bracket. And so we were going to have 2 skirmishes, a modified skirmish, and then a full size. But because of the way that the Pendulum packet works, and once there is a single player that has more tournament points than anybody else, the tournament's over. We actually wound up finishing the tournament after the 3rd round and didn't move into that 4th round. So that's why we went with, I put it up to a vote. Instead of playing that final full-size game, we're just going to start a whole nother tournament, but this time starting with the full-size game, which I like because no matter what, we're going to be getting every single game size in. So we're going to have a full-size, a modified skirmish, and a skirmish as our first 3 rounds. So that way, all sizes are going to get played.
I actually like it for more also just that, like, in a real life tournament, it gets your biggest round out of the way first. So I think that would also help out with scheduling and timing needs for real life tournaments. So I think that's actually a really cool idea.
Yeah, I agree as well. And then especially for tournaments, because I think so up to 16 is 4 rounds. And then after that, I don't remember what the next bracket size is, but it's like 32 or something. And that one's 5 rounds, but 4 of those rounds are still skirmish sized. So I think it works really well for in-person because you can knock out the big game at the beginning of the day, have lunch. While people are on lunch, you can flip the tables over and change out your terrain for skirmish size, and then you're set to go for the rest of the day. So I think de-escalation actually makes a lot of sense for an in-person tournament as well.
Well, and it also helps because, I mean, inevitably in some of these bigger tournaments, people are going to drop. And so at least those people that dropped after round 2 or 3 at least experience, like, both versions of the game.
This is true.
And I think that's important that, I think every size of the game has its own features and things that are there to love. And so getting to experience all of that is better, in my opinion.
Agreed.
So what was the faction breakdown for people that signed up for this first one?
All right, so this one, we had a little bit more of a skewed breakdown than the original tournament that I ran. So this time we only had one representative for the Iron Star Alliance. We had 3 players playing Marcher Worlds, 3 players playing Empyreans, and 5 players playing Eternus Continuum. I have noticed that AC is super popular. Someone was posting on Facebook the other day about like whether to pick up ISA or AC, and literally like every single person that commented on there was like AC, 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 AC. And so then of course I had to post like, yep, this proves AC's a cult.
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
But I think that's really interesting too, because like ISA, they're a faction that super draws me in for there to only be one. And otherwise, if you'd taken the 2 extra that were in AC and put them into the ISA, it would have been a completely even faction breakdown.
Yep.
And one sad thing was that even though I think his lists are great, the ISA lists in this tournament were completely skewy and crazy. He was running max interceptors. it was a thing of beauty. That's all I have to say.
In every format.
Yeah. I think he ended up like 5th or something.
Something like that.
Like he ended up a lot higher than I was expecting, because I would have never expected 4 to 5 interceptors to go that far. But hey, he made it work. He seems to have had fun with it. I think if I recall, his first game was kind of a blowout, but his other games were kind of interesting.
Yeah, he wound up at 8th. Is where he wound.
That's honestly, I still think that's an achievement personally. But
yeah, I agree.
Anyway, so let's go on to our routes through the tournament. Ryan, let's start with you. What faction did you?
Yeah, so continuing from the first tournament, and mainly because I backed them in the Kickstarter, I decided to go with the Empyreans again to get some more play time. First round, I played against Rodco with Marcher Worlds, and that game was all kinds of messed up for internet and Steam reasons, and started late. And when you're tired and you don't remember rules and you can't remember how things score properly, it went bad for me. It was a close match, but it still went bad, even though I kind of screwed up and dropped a Sentinel in turn 1 off of a Void Gate crash from Nyx, and that should not have happened.
Yeah. I mean, it's fine. We all have games that we're like, what was I even thinking?
Yeah.
Or you just misinterpret a rule, or you play a rule wrong, or you're just tired and crazy stuff happens. We all have those games.
Yeah.
So.
Yep, we're all due one. It was fine. It was a fun game either way. I wasn't in this to try to like win or anything, because we all knew that even if I made it there, I was gonna lose against Sneaky to begin with, so it didn't matter. But
I mean, that's our experience in all the tournament. Everybody just says,
yes.
what? But even if I make it to the final round, I just
for sure. But it's an accomplishment to make it there. So round 2, I played against Beards. He played AC. It was a weird game. I think he's a newer player as far as TTS goes. He said he's played quite a bit in real life, but he couldn't keep things on the board. AC is very solo dependent, I've come to find, and against the Empyreans, if your dice are even kind of average to above average, you can take out the Marauders that they need, and then just depends on how they're. Yeah, he didn't run a light warjack either, which was kind of confusing to me. He decided to go for the heavy with the Nemesis, and I think that was probably a mistake for him.
Was he not running
Scythe? Seems like he did not bring a Scythe out, because this was still 8-1 So
I mean, my
that was like a big
2 sides and a Nemesis.
Yeah. He ran a lot of solos, and then not the Reavers. Which ones are the ones that do corrosion? I can never remember the names.
Raiders.
Yes, the Raiders. Yeah. So he ran quite a few of the Marauders. He tried to keep Weavers on the board. I did a pretty good job controlling the Weavers. So it was kind of lopsided, but I account that partially to he hasn't really played much TTS either. I think he played Sneaky in round 1 and got blown out, and then played me in round 2 and got blown out. So I kind of fell for him, but
he hates Empyreans now.
Hey, you can feel bad for him, but you guys apparently did not break his spirit, because he's in for the next season.
Good. I'm glad. I told him, I said, look, if you ever want to play some practice matches or whatever, just so you can kind of get used to Empyrean overlords of your life from the rest of eternity to just hit me up so we can do some stuff so he can get a little more used to it. But we'll see what happens. So yeah.
And
But
then you have
moving into round 3, yep. I played Hitakul, and that is the spammy ISA list of all the interceptors of which you spoke about before. It turned out pretty interesting because about midway through the match, I was like, "Hey, Hitakul, stop putting interceptors out," and he was like, "Okay," and he started doing really well after he stopped putting interceptors out because they would get one shot every single time they came out, and eating up 3 arc out of a gate for something just gets one shotted every time, and you don't get an activation off of any of your jacks because of it. It makes it really difficult, I think, for what he was trying to do. It was cool, but it wasn't working. That match literally came down to the last round, last turn. I had to basically velocity projector his not interceptor. What's the named?
Duchess.
I can never Duchess. Yep. So I had to velocity projector his Duchess off of a point in order to score, and I ended up actually taking her out, which allowed me to basically seal the victory and get the win. But yeah, he played really well after he stopped putting all the interceptors out.
You did do him that one favor, turn 1, where you killed the interceptor and let him reset his
Yes.
activation tokens.
Yes, that was a big mistake. I didn't really think about it. I was like, oh, yeah. I got excited because I was just
smash him again.
yeah. I was like, I don't care about the other 2 things. They already activated. I'm just gonna murder this interceptor right here. And then Sneaky pops in and goes, "That was a mistake." And I was like, "Oh yeah, you're right. Oops."
So, what
Yep,
was your most
so,
memorable moment in the tournament?
Oh man, probably the fact that I did not realize how scoring worked in the first round. I thought for some reason only one person could score each of the points once per pulse round. So I didn't try scoring them after like he had already got onto a point because reading
Oh,
hard.
okay.
Yeah, so the reading is very wonky, and I took it very literal when it is not as literal as I took it. So that
Man,
was
that's an
probably the
easy
most
way to lock
memorable
somebody
thing
out
that
if
I
you're
had
playing
happen.
it that way.
Yeah, exactly. And
Talk about
I didn't
first turn
realize it
advantage.
because, yeah, exactly. Between that and the velocity projector taking out Duchess, needing to win versus Hitakul, probably the most memorable parts of the tournament for me.
Yeah, those games
Any
where it
big
comes
takeaways?
down to that last digest, those are always the most memorable. They're so much fun.
Yeah, those are the best games.
Yep.
Whether
Yeah,
you win or
nobody
lose, the fact
wants a
that it was
blowout.
a game
You
till the
know.
very last turn of the very last pulse round, that's what I play. Like I love that.
That's what I always hope for.
So, what? Any other takeaways from the event?
I mean, Pendulum as a whole, it's weird because it's kind of last man standing, and I should have known that going in. So it's not forgiving. That's my only thing. Like, if you get a bad matchup in the first round against somebody who's really good, and you have suboptimal dice or don't get turn advantage on that scenario, it can put you out of the entire tournament possibly. That's my only quote unquote problem with it, but it does separate the people with skill and the ability to overcome any kind of issues that they would normally face. So, on one hand, it's a good thing. For newer players, it can kind of be feels bad, I think, because they don't feel like they are really in it for the rest of the tournament, even though they're still there playing. That's my only concern.
Okay. So we'll move on to Red. Red, what was your tournament experience like? And starting off with what faction did you play?
So I decided to switch it up because I've been playing Marcher World since the game came out, and I switched it up over to Imperium because I wanted to see how they played and whether or not they were strong. Because I am practicing, and here's a plug for the Broker Brawl that is coming up in October. So I'm practicing for that tournament because it'll be kind of like the first tournament that I can play in person. So I'm
That
excited
might be the
for
first
that.
major tournament for Warcast.
Yeah, they're doing a skirmish all 3 days, and I plan on being in each of those skirmishes because it's my old stomping grounds. So really excited there. And the Somerville Ogre and Bokers, they are They are a good group of people to play with. They are really good. So yeah,
That-
I decided
that
to
is-
switch it up.
And they're based out of Jersey. Of our
Yeah.
East Coast listeners,
Mhm.
keep your calendar late October.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time. Going to be a good time. So yeah, I decided to switch it up, try a new faction, start learning how to play them or how to beat them. I was kind of hoping to see some ways to beat them that might be interesting for me to play.
Interesting. So tell us
Yeah.
about your round one.
So round one was against a guy by the name of Raffy. Waffy on the Discord. He is stellar. Really good guy. That round did not go well for him at all. He was playing AC. I kind of used the sneaky playbook and ran it clockwork, and unfortunately, it did not go well for Raffy. He was he was total gentleman, good sport, like took it on the chin, had a good time with it. You know, we tried to laugh, we tried to have a good time with it, but yeah, round one didn't go well for him. Then I went into round two with Josh from here, and yeah, and he was playing March of Worlds, so I don't know. I wanted March of Worlds to win, but I also wanted to not lose. So it was kind of a emotional time for me.
Very conflicted.
I was very conflicted. No, that game went pretty close. I think I played a decent game for a brand new faction to me because this was my only second game with Empyrean. And so it went close. Around the end of Pulse Round 2, he started to get the head. You can also watch that game. If I remember correctly, it was recorded and commentated on, if I remember correctly.
I think
Yeah.
Brian
Yeah.
actually commentated on that one.
Yeah,
Yeah, you just posted that, right? YouTube.
yeah,
Time this-
Yes. Yep.
yeah. I haven't got to listen to it yet. I'm hoping that they talked a lot of trash about me, so
they
that
did. That's
that's good. That's beautiful.
I just left wrist afterwards.
Oh, I love it. So yeah, I hope to watch that here soon. But if you want to take a look at that game, that was a pretty close game. It was a pretty tight game. It was I enjoyed it quite a bit. Then my third game was against No Howard, and this was the weirdest game I had ever played. Once again, playing into March of Worlds, we had several spectators spectating the game, partially because it was a train wreck and you could not look away.
Could
No, it just could not.
This is
I
true.
tried a few times. I kept looking back.
I was the driver of said train wreck, and after a while,
I think you were the wreck.
yeah, I was both the train and the wreck. It was pretty bad. It was just horrid. So in this game, oh gosh, this was funny. He charged across with a Strike Raptor, and it was a different build of a Strike Raptor. I hadn't seen this kind of a build before. It used some slug guns. It used some cool stuff. And I tried to not use the Nyx gate trick right off the bat because I wanted to start different and explore new part of Imperium. I learned don't do that. So he tried to kill my stuff, and I knew he wouldn't make it. And I thought that I would take him out immediately and then gain the upper hand. Unfortunately, my dice spiked downward, and the Strike Raptor lived to kill my Sentinel and my Oculus on the next turn. I popped another Sentinel and an Oculus out to try to get back onto the board, and unfortunately, because I just wasn't used to the slug gun, and I put my Sentinel too close to the board edge, which was the major mistake of the game. He took the Sentinel and the Oculus out again a second time, putting me on, and then took the gate out, putting me on no models at all. And so at that point, I had to make a choice. I could either stop playing the game, or I could try to figure out how to get back into it. And whenever you're practicing for major tournaments and stuff like that, it is sometimes a really good thing to practice from the back foot, trying to work yourself out of an impossible situation. Because when you're put in the pressure of an actual tournament, IRL, you're going to sometimes have to work out of that. And so I decided to go for it and shoot for it. I also decided that No Howard seemed to be taking longer turns than me. So I decided on a new strategy of giving him the best puzzle I could give him, even with one model, to try to force him to go deeper into the think tank and hopefully clock himself. So yeah, it was my most memorable moment was trying to win a game with no models.
Actually, I want to share a little anecdote from that game. Like, start of Pulse round 2, somewhere around there, Sneaky pops in and he's like, "Hey,
Oh, yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen this before, but I think you got mercy rule."
I was
You're
like, shut up,
like,
Sneaky.
"Shut up, Sneaky! I've got a plan."
I've got a plan. Just watch me.
I was watching this one.
And then like me and Sneaky then proceeded to wait for this plan. The plan was the clock.
It's got it too.
I didn't say it was a good plan, but it was a
Yeah,
plan.
he
But
was
yeah,
only 10 minutes off of clocking out, right?
yeah, he was 10 minutes off of clocking out. But like going into pulse round, like round 2 of pulse round or turn 2 of pulse round 3, I had only used 15 minutes of my clock because I'm just like gate go, and I'm trying to go as fast as I can because I want him to have absolutely no time to think about what he's going to do on my clock. So yeah, it was a weird game, but
Man.
hilarious.
So any takeaways?
Yeah, I got a couple. One was against Pendulum. We're getting ready to put out our Pendulum episode and get back to casting again. And one of my hot takes from that episode was that I was really worried that we would get into the 12 and 13 person brackets and we would just lose full battles because the tournament would end early. We saw it a lot in one of our other Eder metas where we always were a round down. And being that we love full battle, we were just very sad that that might happen. And then in this tournament, like the first one right off the bat, it comes true. And I'm like, I'm hoping I'm wrong later on. But luckily, we're going to do a de-escalation. And I think that's a much better format. It doesn't make sense, of course, in World, but it makes much more sense for like having a well-rounded game and tournament. So I really like that.
A lot of sense. Like, getting that big round out of the tournament right away, and getting to experience all sizes of the game, like it'll kind of show like what factions are better at what size of the game and everything. And I think it's overall just better for the game anyway.
I think so. I meant when I said in world, I meant in the fluff world. Like armies are getting, I don't know. It seems like a de-escalation seems weird. It's kind of the memento of games where you're seeing everything backwards, whether it grows and it's shrinking. But I think it'll be fun. Yeah,
like, cool, we have this big battle fighting over this stuff, and then like once whoever wins like secures that area, then it starts breaking down into like smaller and smaller skirmishes.
Yeah, I guess that's right.
Which you might see in like which you'd see in like real world, type stuff. So that's kind of. I think it's
going to be good fun. Real good fun.
Yeah, and I kind of hope that Privateer Press sees that format and kind of like adapts to that. Because I think that they really do like the full size. I feel like the game is better balanced around full size, and I'd rather people get to experience that in the first round and not feel like they got robbed of that full size experience.
Right.
Yeah.
I hope so
too. You can blame Josh for that.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna blame Josh for everything. He's not here.
Right. And then I guess the only other takeaway that I had was there is a perception that the Empyreans are the OP faction of the game right now, especially in skirmish. And that is the reason that another reason that I wanted to play them is to see them from the Empyreans' perspective. And I think that is an absolutely true statement in the hands of a skilled player. In the hands of the skilled player, the Empyreans seem very oppressive because they have so much to do. But in the hands of a weak player like myself, I think they're pretty balanced.
I wouldn't call you a weaker player. I would say you're not as Empyreans. And I noticed that your play style with them is much more conservative than Sneaky's.
Yeah, it is.
Like you were setting things up way back a lot of the time. Like I know the game I saw with you and Josh, like your Nick sat on like the deployment line the entire game. I was like, what is going on? Because every game I play against him, Nix is like right in the middle of it. And he's like, go ahead and kill me. I don't care. I'm going to charge up that Sentinel though. You set Sentinel over there, I'm going to charge that.
Right. That might be my 40K coming out in me where we play a little bit cagier, but yeah. But yeah.
I think it's even just an Empyreans thing. Because I know I have to play really cagey with AC. Or I just don't have models. And even when I do play cagey, a lot of the times I don't have it. So.
Yeah. And I think that's like, we talk about Imperium's main weakness being their lack of range. And in full battles, we see a better balance. And I played against Sneaky in full battles, and they did seem more balanced. But I think there's also another hidden weakness in the fact that they can do so much that it gives, like I said, a weaker player or somebody who's not as experienced with them more chances at failure. because they'll make a wrong decision because there's so many decisions to make, and they kind of give you a decision paralysis in that regards, where you've got a lot of things you have to remember, and you're going to forget something, and then that is where you're going to have to try as the opponent trying to play against Empyreans. That is where you're going to have to capitalize on that, but you got to be able to recognize it.
Interesting. So I'll go through my tournament experience. Wait, did you want to say something?
That was Ryan.
Oh, Ryan, did you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I was just saying I would agree entirely. Just from my first experience playing them in the tournament, there's definitely a paralysis of all the different options that they have, and it can be very confusing at first until you figure it out. So I would agree with Red there.
They do have a lot of rules. Like, every model in that army has at least one extra rule or one extra stat that you wouldn't expect.
I would have to say, like, you've got what games now, Ryan?
Yeah, somewhere between 8 to 10 now.
8 to 10, yeah. Because I mean, you've come a long way. So like once you start getting used to the faction, yeah, you can start picking stuff up and like making cool stuff happen. But it definitely takes a minute.
For sure.
Okay. Well, I'll go through my tournament run, and actually I'm going to save my round 3 because I played against Sneaky. So I'll just talk about that when he's talking about his. Kind of talk about it together. So I played a Turnus Continuum in the tournament. And my round 1 was against Luis from Charge and Spike. We had a pretty good game. I think it was very back and forth. The first round of the tournament was on Boiling Point, which is the only end of activation scoring scenario. There was a lot of back and forth. It was a really fun game. I'd love to play him again sometime. It was good. I have nothing but good feels from that game. The one interesting point about that game was that he chose recon instead of body count for his secondary, and he actually ended up scoring more on that than I scored on body count. So whereas I still personally feel that body count is usually the right answer, there are situations where recon will net you, and it's a lot more consistent. You're not depending on dice. You can usually plan out recon, especially in skirmish. So good on him. That was a great game. My round 2 was against No Howard. I had also never played against No Howard, so one thing I have to say for this tournament is that I got to play against 2 people that I've never played before, and they were awesome opponents. We were playing on the scenario where it's just the 3 points across the kind of diagonal, and they score the same every pulse round. That game was very back and forth. I did win the die roll at the beginning of the game, which is I think the only reason why I had any kind of chance in that game. Because I chose to go second, and end of pulse round scoring, it gave me a huge advantage. Because I know that I think the whole third pulse round, besides my final turn where I summoned like 4 things the turn before, I only had like 3 models in the board for a lot of that game. So a lot of it, like if I didn't have that chance to contest, I don't think I would have been into the game. But it was a great game. He was a good opponent. I look forward to playing with him again in the future, even though Strike Raptors terrify me. Then round 3 was against Spencer, and we'll talk about that together in a little bit. My most memorable moment from the tournament was actually in the game with No Howard. It was the final turn of the final pulse round. We were tied, and I had to do this crazy jank play in order to win the game. I had summoned 2 Weavers and a Scourge out of the gate, and he had all the points were contested or not being scored except for the middle one. He was scoring the middle one at the end of his final turn. So I had a Weaver that was peeking around the side, shoot his Engineer with the Corrosion Fury. I had the Scourge go up top. I charged the other Weaver. I had the Scourge go up top, try and kill that Engineer, which Scourge failed. No surprise there. The Weaver, instead of using his regular movement to make it to the top of the ladder, because if I had done that, I would have wasted some movement, I had to spike to get up to the top of the ladder. And then I sprayed down on that Engineer, and this Engineer had to die. Like there was no questions about it. In order for this to work, the Engineer had to die. So I got lucky and I killed him with the spray, which he was also harder to hit for my Scourge because I put a Mantlet out that was actually protecting him. So I did manage to kill him. So then the Weaver jumped off the building. Unless I rolled, triple super strikes, the Weaver would live. So the Weaver then jumped off the building and got an angle on the Duskwolf on the point to where I could velocity projector him off and score the point at the end of the pulse round. Wow. It was like a crazy series of things that had to all come together to make it work. but it did. I got lucky with it. And yeah, it was just I'll remember that moment in a game for as long as I play this game.
Yeah, No Howard seems to be a guy that's very memorable. He really thinks hard about it. I think I'll remember our game for a long time.
Well, you might want to try and repress them.
Nah, never. No. No Howard's a champ.
And you know what? One thing
Those are the
about him
best
is he
learning
was trying out
experiences.
some different things on his Strike Raptor too. He didn't have the general build that you usually
Mhm.
see. I think you alluded to it, but he also ran the Vortex missile,
Yeah,
which
he did.
against me, it didn't really matter that much. And normally, like if we were doing a Marcher World cast right now, I'd tell you to stay away from him because the Strike Raptor doesn't
Right.
spike off his art. But you know, in your game, they actually ended up being super oppressive because he ended up fighting Void Gates for the last half of the game.
Yeah, the Vortex missiles and the slug gun were the MVP of that entire thing because he was constantly throwing me off the board and vortexing me.
Yeah, so kudos to him for trying something different and making it work. Yeah, that Vortex missile, like I say, in my game, it wasn't really, it was kind of a non-issue. I don't think the slug gun actually came up a whole lot either. But the Strike Raptor always is an MVP. He always does things. I just don't think he did anything that was particularly strong for the slug gun or the Vortex missile. And I think he was also running the Ace Cortex. So then that slug gun is a 10-inch slam gun, which is gross. Anyways, takeaways for me from the event is I really liked this because it let me play people I don't normally play. Most nights around 10 p.m. Eastern, you'll see me put in looking for group on the Discord. And I usually get the same people, if I get anybody. But I usually get the same people. And it was really nice to get to play with different people and see different play styles and see a Strike Raptor that wasn't, double rock thruster and the particle cannon and the cyclone missiles, and talk with people and see what their experiences are, because that's kind of one thing that I've been kind of missing with going to stores and stuff, is getting to actually have that interaction with people that are playing things a little different than what you're used to seeing. So that was super exciting, and I'm happy to have gotten to play more people, and I'm hoping I get to play even more people in this next one. So Spencer, why don't you tell us about your tournament experience?
So I was playing the Empyreans as well because because I went in on the Ultimate for the Kickstarter, so that's my faction. So round one, I also played Beards, Beardy. So I do have to give a huge shout out to him. One, he's just an awesome guy, and he plays pretty well. But it was unfortunately a blowout, But like, just mad props because he's the only person that didn't concede, and he's the least experienced player. I don't know how much he's played in person, but at least in our little circle. And he was even like, at the end of Pulse Round 2, he's like, the game's over, but if you want to keep playing, we can. And I was like, I appreciate that because I want my victory points.
Put the score up, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually what happened. And so, yeah. So, I mean, like, I got like 11 or 13 points in the second Pulse round. Like, it was crazy. Or the third Pulse round, I mean. So, like, huge shout out to Beards for just being a really good sport. My second round was against Rodko, and he was playing Marcher Worlds. He was using the more traditional setup for the Strike Raptors and things of that nature, and his Strike Raptor just decided to take the entire day off. So first, he went. I lost the roll, so I went second. And I forgot to mention this earlier. So the format was round 1 was Boiling Point, round 2 was Spontaneous Combustion, and round 3 was Chaos Theory. So for everyone's reference. So I lost the roll. I went first. So then I nixed up the board, gate crashed, threw some stuff over to be in a position to where it could contest his point via ladder. And then he Cortical Rampagers, which I hate that card.
I hate that card too.
I hate that card so much.
So busted.
Yeah, and then just because of ladders, I don't even think he had to fly. No, he didn't have to fly to get down to engage my models. And so then he attacks a a demon and a factotum, and he's got, I think, 2 strafe guns and 2, POW 3 armor piercing attacks, and both of my things are within 2 inches of each other, and he deals 1 damage to both of them. It was just nuts.
Well, let me just interject here. Factotums for you have like the dumbest luck I've ever seen in my entire life. Like those things survive like the most absurd situations almost every time.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, it wasn't even the factotum that upset Rodko the most. Then I take my next turn. I don't remember what I do. And so then Rodko gets to activate his Strike Raptor again. So remember, he's about 6 attacks in at this point. Then he Aggression Theorems, so with one of his strafe guns. So he gets another 2 attacks off. And then he activates the Strike Raptor and he goes in on the Nyx. And he tries to mess the Nyx up. And he's rolling with his Cyclone Cannon 7 whites and a red or something versus my 3 whites. And I roll a 5 on the whites and he rolls a 1. And I think that's the point where he just gave up. Yeah, he wound up doing, I think, 1 or maybe 2 more damage that round. And so then, so that finished off his second turn. So then my third turn, he had summoned a whole bunch of stuff in his deployment zone, and he had put them in like a line, but normally I wouldn't have been able to get a spray off. But then I play Ascension Catalyst, get that extra 2 inches, so it lets me get a spray off. And I'd been able to... I had Astrius. So I charge Astrius, move him over. He doesn't do anything except for charge up the Sentinel. And then with the Ascension Catalyst, the Sentinel gets in place. He does 1 spray across 2 Weavers and an Engineer, and got body count. He just one-shot all 3 of them with 1 attack. And then
those sprays are fair and balanced.
Yeah, and then Rodko had hidden his Void Gate behind some terrain to where normally it wouldn't be visible, but phased projectile cannons. And so then I put 2 or 3 damage onto his Void Gate, and then that's when he called it. He was like, "It's over."
Fair and
yeah. So that's when I got that concession. So that ended that game. My Sentinel was just like, yeah, I see what you're doing over there, Strike Raptor. I'm not sure what you were up to last night because you didn't show up to the game today, but I'm going to show you how it's done. And so that was really interesting. And then my last game was against Justin.
Yeah,
we were
me and
playing
you
Chaos
played for what
Theory.
became the final.
Yes, for what became the finals. And honestly, I don't really remember what happened, so...
Well, I mean, it was probably pretty much a blur from what you usually do, which is,
This-
wipe me off the board, I bring back a couple of things, you wipe me off the board again, rinse, repeat, and then eventually once you broke my spirit, I can... One memorable part from that game was he took his Sentinel, which I think he got like 6 body points on me during this game before the end of second point, so it was looking real grim. My Nemesis happened to be really close to him, and he's shooting at like 2 solos across from the Nemesis. He's like, "Oh, I guess I clip your Nemesis." I'm like, "Okay." Fully charged Nemesis, 6 armor. He's like, "Well, I guess I'll roll it." Rolls it, like completely beats me up on the roll, and then rolls a 12 for damage and does 2 points to a fully charged Nemesis. And that Nemesis, once he was on fire, failed to do anything for the rest of the game. So
Jeez.
it was pretty brutal. Like, I don't like conceding, but there was no agency even halfway through the second pound. Like, I could have sat there for another hour and played, been subject to a game, but it was not a game after he got so many body counts and I couldn't keep models.
That was middle of turn 2, pulse round 2, I think, when you conceded.
And I think you were going to end that pulse round with something like 15 points or something.
Probably.
So, like, my 1. it was gross. It was something, like, really gross. Like, I just couldn't keep models on the board. And, you need models to play. And I was going first. So, in a pulse round scoring, like, from that die roll, I was like, well, I don't know if I have agent from here anyways. But we'll try this out. And then it only, like, landslided. Like, and the Nemesis had opportunities to shine that game. Like, I had like 3 different turns where I almost got body count. Because I feel like if you're going first, you need to score body count or at least keep your opponent off the points or something. And I had opportunities. They just never happened. Like, I know that Jax couldn't kill a 2 health remaining factotum while she's charged and he's corroded already. That was frustrating.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Oh, I didn't.
And then the factotum just healed itself back up to full.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
my
And another actually a takeaway from that game, because I didn't really talk about that game. The art booster objective, they really didn't play much of a role in my other games. That game, once you added 2 of them and they were kind of back line, because in all the other missions they were very central. In that mission, it actually made your sentinel even more oppressive to attack, because you ended up controlling one of them, and as long as you control one of them, if I go for your sentinel and it has 2 arc on it, you don't even mind just chucking that arc instead of it taking damage, because you're going to get it back.
Yeah,
so it was very oppressive. There was a turn where I could have gone for a sentinel, but if I didn't kill it, he was going to just heal it because he had a factotum nearby, and we even rolled it out, and I wouldn't have killed it. It was pretty brutal. I had no agency in the game after. Like I think when I conceded, I think I had a solo and half a squad on the board. It was pretty brutal.
I don't remember. Jax was a champ though. She almost
Jax was almost a champ.
Yeah, that last
I've never seen Sneaky activate a Sentinel with 1 arc. Just for the record, he activated with 1 arc, and he's like, "Well, I'm gonna kill Jax Redblade," and Jax dodges every attack until the last one. Tired. Whew.
Yeah,
I've been dodging and weaving all day, and then she just dies in 1 shot.
Off a phase projectile cannon, my dice just blew up. It was pretty crazy. I had to put all 4 attacks from the Sentinel into Jax. But
you know what?
I got her on the last one.
The more I test with Jax, I hate to say it, she's been replacing her Axis.
Yeah, I feel like 11-2, Raxus Jax is the way to go. I mean, Sec is crazy and can do some stuff, but I don't know.
Well, here's a note about Sec. His hazmat suit or whatever that environmental suit or whatever that rule is that makes him immune to fire, corrosion, and freezing.
Yeah.
Cryolocks. Yep.
That is the most annoying rule on the planet to me, because he's part of an AC and it mostly protects him from AC. Because the only fire weapons in the game are Enigma's fire gun and the flamethrowers in Marcher's World. Everything else, including the Nova cannon, which is the 12-inch fire spray, continuous fire spray, is an energy or a beam, so he doesn't actually get protected from that. I found out the hard way.
You get protected from the Blazer as well.
Is it fire typed?
I think no, the Blazer's
no,
beam.
it's not actually. It's beam that gives continuous fire. Never mind.
Yeah, it just does. So he's protected from the continuous fire, but that doesn't mean anything if he gets eaten up by the beam.
Right.
I think the only cold things that he's protected from are Cryolock and the Entropier. The only corrosion gun in the game is also the Holophage cannon, so he's got his coverage versus AC. He's situationally covered, but from the other factions. I actually didn't look it up. Is Pyrokinetic Surge actually fire type?
Yeah, pretty sure.
So he's protected completely from Pyrokinetic Surge.
And Cryolock.
And Cryolock. So, but as far as weapons go, it's just so annoying that he's only protected from 4 weapons and 3 of them are in AC. It's super annoying to me. Sorry, I had to go on that tangent because I'm like, he's got his hazmat suit. He's immune to this fire spray. You're like, it's not fire type. I'm like, are you kidding me?
I remember that moment.
It hurt my soul. I was like, I need to keep something on the board. They're like, no, you don't.
That's what led Ryan's opponent to conceding in the first tournament. that ruling.
Yeah, he got very mad.
Yeah, he was just like, you know what, I'm done.
Yeah,
that was a frustrating moment for me, because then it made me pour through all the rules and be like, what is this guy immune to? This rule sounds so good on the outside, and then you find out that he's immune to holophages, which means against AC, which only AC and Empyreans can take him. So great, in the mirror you're set. But he's most, and people aren't even flamethrowers are awesome, and people don't even take those much anymore in Archer.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, because Sneaky had to go and show people how to build strike raptors on steroids that just decimate everything in their path.
Oh, that's another sad thing.
Once
The
the debuff
Nemesis.
thing, you can just
The-
kill them.
Like, that Strike Raptor, like, the Nemesis is already, like, a fringe pick anyways. But then, like, that Strike Raptor is like, don't bring it, please. I don't want to hurt you this bad. Like, that Nemesis is always armor 3 to that guy, and he's actually armor 2 versus those weapons. 10 pips and you're done, son.
Yeah, defense 3, armor 2. It doesn't matter if you have 5 boxes. It really doesn't.
Yeah. So, sneak to the final standings. Just tell us the top 5.
Top 5. Okay, I can do that. So coming in first was myself. Coming in second was Rodco, who was playing Marcher Worlds. Coming in third was Justin here with AC.
Oh, yeah, AC, represent.
Yeah. Then coming in fourth was Josh with Marcher Worlds. And then coming in fifth was Nathan, No Howard with Marcher Worlds. And then I'll throw out 6 because that was Ryan. So.
Yay!
So
That's the top 50% of the tournament.
An AC and an Empyrean?
2.
No, 2 Empyreans.
Yeah. So top 6 was 2 Empyreans, 3 Marcher World, all the Marcher Worlds actually, and an AC player.
Somehow that doesn't surprise me. The AC player surprises me, but
What was you?
well, I know. But the thing is, well, that makes it even more surprising, honestly. But yeah, it was interesting. There was like I think the bracket played out like faction wise mostly how I expected. I'm kind of curious to see what would have happened if we'd have had 2 more people playing ISA and it had been a perfect balance, like where everybody would have fallen.
Yeah, and then another thing to consider is the like the experience levels. So about a third of the players are what I would consider highly experienced players, and then about a third were about mid tier, and then about a third were just like more or less new players. So we had a pretty good
at least
spread.
new to TTS, right?
Yeah, some people were like straight new, and some were relatively new, but definitely DTS.
Yeah, and there's some upcoming players in those newer ones. Even people
sure.
didn't have like a great showing. Like they're scary players, man. Like I know I played against JoJo one time, like shortly before the tournament. He's gonna be a scary dude.
Yeah, JoJo's really.
He's been getting a lot of play.
He came in 7th.
Yeah, he's one to look out for. Well, I mean, so he was 7th, so it means there's 4 slots and 3 of them are AC and 1 of them is ISA.
And then Imps.
Oh yeah, 1 more Imps. So, it's interesting how it shook out. I kind of expected Imps and Marcher Worlds to kind of rise to the top. I have a personal feeling that their tools are just better suited, especially to skirmish, than most other factions. And we didn't play a full size game, so that didn't really end up coming into play, like whether their tools actually are still as relevant in full size.
Yeah, I'm excited for.
I'm excited to play the de-escalation. I think even there's a world where I think a future tournament could be just full size games. Just to see how that would end up working out.
It just takes forever, especially on DS with scheduling and stuff. So
that's true. It's just like I don't know. I have this more balance at full size, so I'd like to see it. Like I've only played a handful of full size games myself. I've played tons of skirmish, but only a handful of full size. So I don't know.
I know Red has some strong feelings on full size.
Very strong feelings.
So Sneaky, what are some of the findings and stats from the tournament?
Yeah, so one of the things that I found interesting, and I was very happy about because I hate secondaries. And it turned out that secondaries had no impact into the final standings on any of the games, except for the one game that Ryan played that was just messed up about 12 different ways anyways. So, so I mean, that made me happy because I'm advocating for secondaries to just be moved entirely because I think it's a waste of design efforts trying to get that to be balanced correctly. But we've talked about that in previous episodes, so I'll step off my high horse. But it was good to know that.
Kind of feels bad. Like,
yeah,
I know our game, they were definitely a contributing factor to me conceding.
Yeah, I mean, they're just a win more mechanic from what I've seen, especially with the prevalence of body count.
Right,
there were a
body
couple
count
people
being the
playing.
primary one. Like, if everybody just had recon and it was like, hey, one of your goals throughout the game is to try and score 3 points by getting on your opponent's side of the board. And it was just, that's what everybody always had. I don't even think it would be that big a deal.
But then at that point, what's the point,
right?
Of having the secondary? So that's kind of how I feel. It's like they're either completely like a negative experience as like a win more mechanic, or they basically force you into certain play styles, or they're too general and they're completely useless. So that's how I feel about secondaries. The other thing that I was looking at was turn advantage, because in the first league it was super evident to the point where, other than Hiticule with his wonky lists and whatnot, and he's allowed, he said I can mention him. Every single player, every single game came down to who had turn advantage. This time it was a little bit more spread out, especially on the end of pulse rounds, which was really surprising. So for the end of activation scoring scenarios, what was that?
I was just clarifying that was just boiling.
Yes, which was just boiling point. So there's one end of activation scenario, which is boiling point, and 2 end of pulse round scenarios. So we had 6 end of activation games and 12 end of pulse round games, except someone dropped, so we only got 11 games in. But for the end of activations, 5 people, 5 out of the 6, won with turn advantage. The only person that won without turn advantage was myself. And then for the end of pulse round, it was actually the majority of people won with turn advantage. So we had 6 people win that were going second player, but then 5 people actually won as first player, which was really interesting. One of those was me, one was Ryan, and then one was Josh's game. And I know how all those went out, and basically it was either, so in my case it was Nathan's dice or Rodco's dice, not Nathan's, absolutely just gave up on him, and he couldn't get back into the game. And in Josh versus Nathan's case, it was that the first player was able to take out a really key model early on, and also because of the arc boosters, Josh just didn't really have a chance to come back into the game. But he was still able to leverage the second turn to where it was a super, super close game, and it came down to his Strike Raptor not killing a Fiddles that it should have killed, or else he would have won the game. So it's still super close. And Ryan, want to talk a little about your experience winning as first player?
Yeah, it was. It was really close. It came down to that last kind of roll and situation where I either had to move his Duchess off of the point that my Sentinel was on, because for whatever reason, my Sentinel kind of pooped out, and I had taken some things out with him at a lower point to try to clear everything that was down there, so I didn't have to rely on getting rid of his Duchess. So basically, I took out 2 out of the 3 models at the lower point that was close to my board side, and I didn't get them all with the Sentinel, and that was my last activation because Astrius had gone and literally did nothing, like not a thing except charge that Sentinel over there, and then I dumped all the arc on, or no, Astrius went second, so I could dump all the arc off of the Sentinel because he had already had 3 on him. So I dumped all the arc with Astrius after he did nothing to put it back in my well, and then I had a velocity projector just sitting in my hand, thankfully, and I didn't have any other choice but to play it on his Duchess because the other play at my lower point wouldn't work. And for some reason, I was like, oh, at least if I hit it, I can move it. Even if I don't kill it, like, I don't care. And I ended up killing it, so it didn't matter. And he couldn't come back from it. He was just tied the other 2 points that we had both had control over, so I ended up beating it by 1 point.
Yeah, so I mean...
Sounds like it also got your body count.
No, I didn't. I was 1 model short. Or, you know what? Yeah, I did. See, I told you there was another point in there where I messed up and didn't count the body counts. That was it.
And then, so I mean, like, we found that turn advantage can be played out of, but it puts, just from like the couple of games that we saw, it puts so much pressure on the disadvantaged player to overperform. Like, you have to like do crazy stuff, or it's really play out of.
Hey, Red, in your game with No Howard, were you going first or second?
The one with no Howard, I went second.
That's what I thought. So that was another
'cause-
one of the ones that overcame turn advantage.
Yeah, he was going first. He cortical rampagered. Then he spiked the 1 spike to fly the Storm Raptor, yeeted him to the top of a building, and went YOLO, and that was it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, and that was
makes
that
sense.
was an oppressive game. That's one of my takeaways is I feel like you have to be pretty oppressive in order to win going first in a pulse round scoring. You can almost always assure your own back things get scored once you kill all their warrior models up front, and they have to keep putting gates back. And then there's really like very limit. If you can keep that momentum, you can really just shut somebody out of a game. And I think that's almost what you have to do with into pulse round scoring. So
Yeah.
I think that's a big advantage for the Imperians too, with being able to use Nyx and Gate Crash, especially as disadvantaged player. Without that, there's no way I would have been able to get in that or stay in the game because it allowed me that first turn to get so far up the board that he had no choice but to basically come down and put pressure where I had already applied the pressure. And by that point, it was just a distraction in the middle to keep him there. So when I went around and went and got the rest of the points.
Yeah, and the turn 1 Cortical Rampager flight play was also what hurt Josh in his game. So I think that Martial Worlds was a little bit better equipped to deal with the turn advantage situation, just because
100%.
Cortical Rampager lets you and Dust Wolves, and they have a lot of options for threading round 1 or turn 1, whereas other factions don't. So.
I mean, I think just the Strike Raptor getting essentially a 16-inch melee threat is atrocious. Like, it is terrifying.
Yeah, it's a
Pretty
crazy.
My
wild.
nemesis cannot hide from that dude. Josh puts him in the middle of the board every time, and he's like, "Hey, I summoned a Corvus." I'm like, I just start crying. I start crying right to him.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
So one thing I kind of want to throw in the outline that we don't have is did anybody have any significant experiences with the arc boost? Because that was something that kind of got tested this pendulum experiment.
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I found out that they're real easy to forget.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
good.
The first couple of games, I didn't even realize they were there. And then the No Howard game, it was just win more. He was able to charge Strike Raptors fully up. It was really, really bad if you let it run away from you. So you got to make sure that you are very cognizant. Those arc booster points become more important than some of the other points to control, which I do find interesting.
Right. And one thing I noticed is that in 2 of the maps, there was only one of them, and they were kind of the first map it was that one central point, and in the second map it was the point that's like right in the middle of the board. So they were very easy to contest and hold and keep away from people, and it was actually tug of war, and you actually felt like you kind of achieved something if you got that extra arc. But in the third map, there were 2 of them, and they were on the objectives that pretty much touch your deployment zone. And I know in my game, especially playing against Sentinels, it just made that Sentinel, like, if you can't 100 to 0 it, which I can barely 100 to 0 anything. I have no faith in my ability to kill anything. People are like, this game's so lethal. I'm like, I can't kill anything. It just made that Sentinel even more insurmountable. And yeah, I think that was pretty rough. Like, I don't think I would have minded if that arc booster was the central objective, and then that gives us a reason to fight there, like an added incentive. And I don't know how you would do that for Chaos Theory if you wanted to maybe even keep that as like, hey, when that objective goes away, you still have the arc booster mechanic that stays. I don't know if that's something that could be done, but yeah, I think that it was definitely not. It was cool in my first 2 games, but it was oppressive in my final.
Yeah, well, Josh has stated he's never playing in a tournament that uses arc boosters ever again. So I'll throw in his little take on them, and I agree. I find them more as a win more mechanic. They throw off the basic rule sets, the faction balance, because it disproportionately affects particularly Marcher Worlds, because one of their big limiting factors is the ability to charge things, and then makes ISA weaker because one of their big strengths is that they can charge things, and then to a lesser degree AC and Empyreans, because Empyreans are good at charging things. AC's at charging things. So
has nothing that helps me charge besides misanthrope, but it's actually really good for the misanthrope because I can throw
Yeah.
all that arc on and then get it right back off. So it would actually be good for AC if I could hold on to them or keep my scourges alive.
Right. So I won't be running them in my tournaments anymore. So pretty much how I felt whenever I first saw the models revealed, I did not like them for various reasons, and I feel like it was validated in this tournament. So I'm not going to be running them again, but I'm glad we got to test them out. So yeah.
Okay. So that's one way we're looking to improve the next pendulum. Anything else, Sneak?
Well, I think as far as so this ways to improve is like for the event. Okay, so I think the de-escalation is a way to improve. That way we can make sure that we're getting in all of the different game sizes, which I think will create a better experience for people across the board. And other than that, I was trying to figure out some way to make Chalong do strength of schedule better so that I didn't have to do math, but I'm gonna still have to do math.
You're gonna do some math, Sneaky.
Yeah, I got
Don't
do
cheap
math.
out on us now.
Yep. Yeah, sadly, Chalong only uses median strength of schedule instead of true strength of schedule, which I don't know why. But yeah, so I have to do math. But other than that, I think the tournament itself runs pretty smooth. I think I've got a lot of good feedback and people having a good time. As far as like Pendulum itself, I forgot to do my takeaways. Concessions are terrible.
It didn't affect your placement at all.
That's because I went undefeated.
Not even a little.
That's because I went undefeated. But they're really big feels bads. Like,
well, considering that the concession happens and strength of schedule is actually the next determining factor, it doesn't actually hurt you unless your strength of schedule is equal.
But that's.
So I think it's so rare that it's actually going to end up hurting you. I thought the next tiebreaker was victory points scored, which would hurt you, but because it goes straight to strength of schedule, then actually you breaking people's spirit and you leave the tournament, that's what's going to hurt you in the future.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now.
I mean, that's true, but it's a big feels bad. Like, it's like, okay, cool. Like, so like Rodco's game, right? I would have scored 5 victory points in pulse round 1, and I got 5 victory points for the whole match.
This feels bad. Like, he's like, this guy didn't let me just maul him for another hour. I can't believe the audacity of these people.
I mean, that's
like,
fair.
What?
But it's
I can't believe it.
concessions are bad.
I think also, like, as somebody that conceded in this, I also feel like, spending another hour when I know I have no chance of even giving you a good game. Like, at that point, did you have, like, you had your entire army on the board and I was fighting to keep remodel. Like,
exactly.
It was going to be a good game for the rest of the time.
But that's why it's a feels bad, because it's like, okay, cool. It's do you continue playing a terrible game that you don't want to play in order to, help out this other player with their victory points and they're standing in a tournament, or do you just concede and then you're just like, sorry, bro, like, sucks for you. Like,
I mean, it's a second tiebreaker. Yeah. Like, I'm gonna sit around for another hour to help you with your second tiebreaker. I'm like,
I just think it could be better implemented. Is all. So
I think that it isn't worth staying in the game if you're not liking it. But at the same time, I always advise people to stay in the game, because when you're playing from the back foot is when you're going to find what you can do. Like, you're going to find those interesting new thoughts or new strategies to try to play better. And even if you're destined to lose the game, you should still stick with it, not for the sake of playing into a bad matchup or just playing in an oppressive game, but to improve your game overall, because you do better, or you're going to learn more from that loss and sticking with it than you will from just walking away.
I understand that line of thought, and, like, I feel like that line of thought sticks better in, like, War Machine, where there's opportunities to, like, get assassinations, because somebody feels like they're being so oppressive that they'll do little things that they probably wouldn't do if they felt like it was a more close game. And you always have that assassination out in War Machine. But like my experience with Sneaky, me to just keep summoning models for him to kill them before I can activate them was not going to teach me anything. I really didn't feel like, and say a Marauder had lived. Okay, I get to put out a second gate, and I have a Marauder. And that Marauder is probably on 1 health. Like it was just going to be like a practice in frustration for me at least.
Okay.
And I would much rather just call the game before I get upset at it.
Yeah, that's just kind of a mentality thing. Is playing through the game going to impact you in your future games, or is it worth sticking out to get better as a player? And you just kind of have to make that decision. It's going to be a personal decision for everybody.
Well, to me,
right?
like I play these games to have fun, right? I want to have an engaging experience. I want to, even if I lose, I want to be a challenge for my opponent, right? Like that's why we all play these games, in order to have like this like battle that's actually a fight with two people. And as soon as it stops being fun or it stops being a battle, it just I lose. I stop being engaged.
And then so then thoughts going into the next one.
Red, what's going on for you for the next one? Anything? I know you're already signed up.
Yeah, I think I'm going to play Empyrean again because I still want to explore them. I've explored March of Worlds for quite a while now, and I'm ready to explore a new faction for a while because I think I don't have enough games under my belt to switch again. I am probably going to keep to the same pendulum list that I had because I think it's a pretty decent list all in all. And I'm going to just try to improve with my openings, focus in on those, getting those down to set me solid for the rest of the game. And then, so that's things that I'm looking at forward to playing in there. And then secondaries, I think I'm actually going to move away from body count because I found that I was not getting body count as often, and I was able to deny body count quite a bit. Until I wanted to give it to somebody. So I think I'm going to go for recon like a couple of other people did, just because it's an easier 3 points.
That's fair.
So yeah, that's what I plan on doing.
How about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I've kind of gone back and forth on whether or not I want to continue with the Empyreans or move over to March of Worlds. I own March of Worlds and ISA. I'm probably going to stick with Empyreans just because I'm so used to playing them now, and I finally feel like I'm kind of hitting a stride. As far as how I normally run everything, I've got a pretty common list build to what Sneaky runs. I think being owned by him so many times in the beginnings of learning everything kind of taught me what was optimal, and I've started to kind of branch out and find my own play style with I think I use a little more fulcrum play for just kind of jumping stuff around to set it up than what he does, but I'm not entirely sure at this moment. But other ways, I've got a few tricks up my sleeve that I want to try that I didn't get to implement that when I was going to implement in the full Battle Force game. So pretty sure I'm going to keep most of my list from the previous Pendulum for this one as well, because I think they're all pretty set up well. Secondaries, I would agree. Recon is a must in any skirmish mission size. If you don't feel like your dice are just going to be blazing hot, it's a guaranteed, 3 points, I think. Yeah, guaranteed 3 points if you get within the 5 inches. Even if they do get body count on you once, it's only 2 points. You're still up 1, unless they're super hot dice or you just have really bad plays as far as placement. And I think Recon makes more sense in a condensed battlefield and playtime. Full Battle Force, no doubt. Body count has to be in play, though.
Yeah, and actually, one thing to note about Recon is that there's on 2 of the skirmish maps, there's actually scenarios that you can score while getting Recon at the same time.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's also a big point to go for Recon. Another point about Recon, though, is that you don't actually have to end your activation touching their deployment zone or stop in their deployment zone. You just have to touch it, and then you can come back. So that's another thing that maybe a lot of people don't realize.
I actually deployed I in turn 1, I Nix gated, deployed stuff out of that, and then turn 2, off of the stuff that I had initially deployed out of the Nix gate, I put a gate down and scored Recon turn 3 from just people coming out of the gate. So they didn't even have to start or move around in there. They just were there. 3 points.
Nice. Sneaky, what are your thoughts going to the?
I'm just gonna, and I think second release it. Other than that, I like what I do. I've got a good game plan, practice with it, and so I'm just gonna keep sticking with it, and then hopefully get to play some new people. And I'm excited about the new map I built. So I'm really looking forward to playing with that.
So takeaways from all the Imperians players: happy and staying. I played AC in the original tournament. I was really sad to actually not see more ISA players. I own a fully painted ISA faction, so I'm like, you know what? I like ISA. Actually, the only reason I didn't, make ISA my starter faction is because my wife was like, they look really. So I'm gonna be playing ISA in this next one. It's really weird because AC, I felt really confident about my builds and lists and things I was putting in there, and it startled me how different it is with ISA. Like just even the Cypher deck feels so different. It's kind of amazing to me how different those kinds of things feel, while not being necessarily much different. We've all got the same number of solos, we've all got the same number of units, we've all got the same number of everything to choose from. But like how valuable those different things are just way different faction to faction. And I'm excited to see how differently things go. I know I've got a little bit of a spicy build for my 8-1 list. So I think I've got 3 Firebrands in that list because I think Firebrand is a super fun light warjack. And you know what? Even things like for AC, the special issue option felt really meaningful and really impactful and really powerful. And in ISA, they feel useful, but they don't necessarily feel like they make or break your list, really. Because I know in AC, like I felt much more confident with my list going into every game because I could switch this out and this out and this out and this out. Whereas like in the ISA builds, I'm like, this doesn't matter and this doesn't matter, and like my base list probably isn't changing from game to game, So like it's really weird, and maybe I just haven't put as much thought into it because I haven't played as much ISA as I have with AC. But I'm feeling a little bit more confident with ISA because I know that me and Sneaky replayed that game we did, and I think dice had something to do with it a little bit, but I felt much better going into Pulse round 2 and 3 with ISA than I did with AC. So I'm really looking forward to playing just something different, and I think that's an episode, guys. So thank you, Ryan, thank you, Red, for coming out and helping us with this episode. It really means a lot to us that you guys come out, and I hope we get to do more collab work with you.
It's a lot of fun. Thanks.
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot.
I did too. Thank you all you guys out there for listening to Through the Void Gate. Be hyped. We're having some interviews coming up in our next few episodes. One's with Doug Hamilton. If you're not familiar with who he is, he's the Privateer Press sculpting god. I think he sculpted like all of AC pretty much, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't know who else he did, but he does a lot of the sculpting for Privateer Press. And then in an episode, we're recording an episode in a few weeks where we're going to be interviewing Matt Wilson and Jason Souls together. So I'm super hyped about those. I mean, Matt Wilson and Jason Souls are pretty much like the parents of the game. So if you want to score an interview with anybody, they're probably the ones, right? Them and Faye. We're going to find you, Faye. We're going to get an interview. If we're going to be doing Twitch content coming up on the SX Wargames channel. So look us up on Twitch, YouTube. We're also SX Wargames, and we're hoping to put more content out there. It's kind of slow. I'm awkward with it. I'm not used to it. So bear with us. We're trying. And thank you for listening. Bye.
Adios.
Thank you for listening. This podcast is brought to you by SX Wargames. Now, if y'all enjoyed the content, don't forget to subscribe. Now, for more content, you check out the Through the Void Gate blog, or join us on the SX Wargames Facebook, Discord, and YouTube. Stay safe and roll super strong.